Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of Let's Talk Trackmania, brought to you by ESAC.gg. We are back once again as episode 13 today. We are back. Excuse the short technical difficulties while Eirik just comes to us just in time. He clutched out in the last second, but we are here. We are back once again for another week. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be joined once again by Eirik Holdal and Kai Ludwig. It's a pleasure to be joined by you lovely people as well to be discussing more Trackmania, and this time it's going to be about TMGL. I say this time, but I suppose we've talked about TMGL quite a bit in the last few weeks. But of course, just before we get started on the episode itself, we'll remind you guys, as I did last week, that ESAC is now open. As check out ESAC.gg so you can check out the upcoming Essential Tournament platform that's been brought to you by the Electronic Sports Arena Challengers. Thank you very much for plugging it in the chat, LuckersTurbo. But that's pretty much all I had to say before we get started. Otherwise, I mean, I suppose the kind of question that we always start off with, or at least I always start off with, is how are you guys doing?
Yeah, Eric, go ahead. Start with you because you joined at the last.
I'm lagging at the moment, so I hope this is not going to be a problem. If not, I need to get the cable that I bought to actually suit it. But the reason why I was late is because now, for the first time in 2020, I've been to the gym. So I'm now starting to get ripped. I mean, I already had the look, I already had the voice, but now I'm also going to get the body. So watch out.
Ooh. Okay, that sounds scary, man. Maybe this time you're not gonna hurt yourself again, because that shoulder looks really, really terrible. So hopefully hope that everything is getting normal again. But yeah, I'm fine as well. Just grinding a lot of Kaki maps at the moment, but it is fun because I'm not playing too much actually. And I was productive today. And how are you doing, Paul? How are you doing, man?
Spectabulous. I'm so happy to be joined by such beautiful faces and such a sculpted body as Mr. Holdal over there. Such a sculpted and broken body. But I'm happy. I'm happy to be bringing Let's Talk Trackmania to you guys once again. Tuesday's becoming a bit of a highlight of my week, I must say. Coming to talk about or have my shit talk hour, I suppose. But Let's Talk Trackmania, as we said, this week is going to be, once again, we're going to be talking a little bit about Trackmania Grand League, as well as a few parts about the future of Trackmania and what we're kind of expecting, what we've been led to expect with a few things, and what kind of direction we think the game's going to move forward, and how we're going to be joining it moving forward, of course. But with, of course, today's episode being about Trackmania Grand League, is only fair to mention, of course, Trackmania Grand League starting off actually this weekend, this Sunday coming. You're going to be able to watch all 16 champions getting started, or hopefully all 16 champions getting started off on step 1 out of 6. 16 orgs, 16 players, and hopefully at least 16 streamers and casters. And a little bird told me that there might be some projects you guys might be getting involved with Trackmania Grand League. So I suppose you guys might have a little bit more to look forward to in TMGL than at least I might. But how are you guys looking forward to Trackmania Grand League, of course, starting up this weekend?
I'm very, very looking forward to it because, I just went to the player list and I was making a kind of tier list. And then I was like, there's only one player who I see in OGL who is performing worse than the other ones. So I think it's getting really close. And I think we can also look forward to surprises. I would just name Marcin, Afi, or Yannick, who can perform really well. But yeah, firstly I have to practice the maps because I haven't touched them at all. Just have watched some videos to see where the key points are. But I'm really excited for the first step.
Yeah, same. I mean, it's the most prestigious tournament in Trackmania. We have the 16 best players playing it, so then naturally I'm going to care about it, and naturally I'm going to follow it. And I have announced that I will cast it, but it's not going to be public what org I'm going to announce for or cast for, because at some point, even though my Twitter is the main place for Trackmania content. At some point, there are orgs that are a bigger account than me, then I'm gonna be okay with them posting it instead. But I had a talk with Salty B. He said that all main casters in Trackmania is gonna cast it. So does that mean that you also gonna cast it, Scotty? Or are you not one of the main casters? What is this?
So he's actually came out and said that. I'm feeling maybe a little bit on the outside now. That's a little bit concerning, but no. After I previously had contact with 2 organisations which I was in discussions with about casting. However, neither of them are now getting involved. I don't know if they've had a deal broken down with whatever player it was they were allocated or decided upon. Sorry. So those 2 main orgs, I don't then have an opportunity with. Following last week's podcast, I actually spoke to Softy a little bit. We're talking about it. And it seems to be there is still one org without a caster, but I'm finding it impossible to contact them, and they're not contacting me. So I don't know. I'm worried, but hopefully it'll all work out. Hopefully, I'll be joining you guys in the casting couch. Maybe on other sides at the very least this time, though. But I'm a bit concerned now.
But if you remember back to, let's say, the last season when there was so many new orgs, I think the first step, there was not that many, let's say, Trackmania cast. I mean, the 3 of us casted, me and Scotty together, and then Turbo for M&M Gaming. But for most of them, like G Geek, Cousin, Radiance, all of them started casting after step 1. So then you maybe see what streams can or what casts can I contribute to. So if you see some caster that you want to see casting in step 1, I don't think it's dead for the whole season. I mean, G-Geek started casting like step 5, 6, and he ended up casting the final, and he ended up being some sort of main caster. So the hope is not dead, Scotty. You cannot give up. But if you don't cast it, are you then going to follow it, or is it then going to be fuck it?
Well, I mean, if I don't cast it, I'll probably be having myself working during that time. But I mean, the lucky thing about my work is that I can work and watch Trackmania. But don't tell them that. I mean, I'm solely focusing on work, of course, 100%. Brain on to whatever I'm doing. But at least the Trackmania Grand League is obviously always something I'm going to follow. I mean, it will just be a question for me where I'm going to be following. But I think with the little bits of information I know, I'm pretty sure whose stream I'm going to be ending up at. A little bit of insider information. We're not just revealing just yet, all in due course, ladies and gentlemen. But this is, I suppose, a little bit of a kind of preview. So enough about me not being able, or at the moment, not casting, because that's not the story for today. I swear this is not the topic, is that Scotty's fucking bullshitting out about not being able to cast. Anyway, so the preview of Trackmania Grand League in general. We spoke about it for weeks and weeks and weeks up to this point. And I suppose we're out now in the kind of final countdown. We are in essentially the final hour of the preview for Trackmania Grand League. We're starting to see the players put their finishing touches into their training. We're starting to see organisations finally coming out and announcing their players. We're starting to see what we would be looking at. Essentially, we're starting to get little indications. It's like the start of a football season where you're able to maybe predict who you would be able to expect in what position and so on. But guys, I mean, going after last week's episode, how were you kind of feeling as to what to expect for Trackmania Grand Leagues? Of course, on last week's episode, it was a little bit of a down note for Trackmania Grand Leagues, a lot of controversy and things like that. But how are you guys kind of feeling from last week? Compared to last week, how are you guys feeling about it now?
So my perception is that things have kind of changed a bit to the point that they try to listen more to the actual community, and that things are going a bit better, that they try to listen to the community. And actually for me, I can feel the hype for the Trackmania Grand League now. So because it's only 5 days away, so it is a really cool event. As Eric already said, it's the main event of Trackmania, and hopefully the actual playoff thing, which has not been changed, will work out. And now I'm not looking at it as a very controversial thing. I mean, Softy said that they are testing it out, and then they will see how it goes. And I will just trust Softy at this point that we will have a format phase or like a playoff phase that is also interesting. So, and then maybe in the third season, we will go to the next or to the previous playoff system, or we just gonna stick with that. Maybe it's good. Who knows? Maybe he is proving us wrong here. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very interesting season, to say the least. I mean, we've still got the parts that we know have kind of gripped us in recent seasons, the parts that we've known to kind of cause drama. They're still there. They've not really went anywhere. But now we've got a complete new dynamic being brought into it with the playoffs phase. And, of course, that is also the new players, of course, coming in. This is the first time, at least since the beta season, if I remember correctly, that we've really had kind of players not being directly invited to it. And also players that people had not initially thought of, in the beta season, for example. Now we're having players who have really been developing over the past few years. Of course, Yannick, Gwen, and Afi being into the league and having the fire in them clearly through the combine and performing very well, and now very much looking forward to how they're going to be playing in season 1. But Eirik, of course, I understand you've also had a rather long podcast with SoftyB, which you announced previously, and was a 2.25 hour long podcast, I believe, which you outlined a lot of kind of parts of what to, general concerns that people were having with Nadal, but also some discussions regarding Trackmania Grand League itself, about the format and such. I mean, you've of course had the most kind of hands-on experience with this, I would say, at least out with the players. How are you feeling compared to last week, now that you've had the chance to sit down with Softy and really kind of work things out, so to speak?
Well, I guess I can first address that. What I did before last week's episode is maybe not something I would do again, because I'm basically covering the whole story of it. I said that I will mainly focus on one story sometimes, but in this case, I generally just saw the player's letter. I just went with it. I never actually asked SoftyB or Hillis or anybody in Ubisoft Mondeo about if this is correct. If I didn't fact check anything, I didn't hear what they had to say about it. So it was sort of one-sided what I run away with, simply because I sort of agree with the players. I didn't bother checking it. So I wish I could change that. But since then, I knew that I would have a chat with Softy. I talked about it, got his reasoning behind everything. It sort of seems like at least the people that was in chat found the situation more clear. Maybe I also understand more what the reasoning behind the playoff system itself is, but I still disagree with the playoff system. I still disagree that you should not. I mean, they want to target it towards our casual audience, but I mean, you can also have it being a place where the players feel that they want to compete in. It's said that most players now agree with it. I'm not going to talk to every 16 players on Thursday and Friday, so I'll see about it. If it's just something it says to put a little bit less flame to the topic, I don't know. But at least it's nice that he takes so long time to come on to answer the questions. Not only the questions I had, but also the questions from the community. That's why I feel that's what I feel is important in my role, to answer questions that are from the community. So some questions wasn't questions I agree with, but it was questions that the community had. So I still I need to see the playoff system before I'm convinced. I need to see what the players feel about it. So the general feeling about the whole situation, about the whole topic, is still not the same, but I wish I had talked with SoftyB maybe earlier than before maybe last week's episode, so I at least had a neutral part, or at least had both sides of the story. But it is what it is. We cannot change it. It seems like they won't change it, so I guess we'll just make the best of it. And I guess that's what the players also think, that, okay, let's just play. Let's just not bother anymore. Let's just see who the best player is in this format as well.
Yeah, it's certainly been the hot topic of the last kind of 2 weeks or so, has been the changes they've been making coming into this new season. Of course, I mean, it's always going to be a point of contest, so to speak, until the playoffs actually run their course, until people see it for themselves. It's kind of like the points loss system, like people would complain about it when they first found out about it, but it was only until they actually saw, say Spam losing 70 points in one step, where the discussion really got brought, forward and right in front of everyone's faces. So it's going to be, the way I kind of look at it a little bit is they're running the gauntlet a little bit with this one. They're taking a big chance with what is an unpopular playoff format, and let's see if they do make the best of it. I suppose you can always look to make the best of a bad situation. It might be unpopular, but if they can figure out some way to at least make it entertaining to watch, then at least there might be some aspect to it that people will enjoy. With it being a little bit more of a, some were quoting it as being a bit of a random kind of format, so to speak, then even to an extent you might be going into a tournament like this not actually knowing who's going to get in what position, where I feel like the kind of establishment's been set for quite a long time in Trackmania now, where, of course, it's being shaken up more recently, but you kind of always had your players you could expect to be in whatever position they were going to be. We talked about it when we were doing the cast for season 1, Eric. There was only 3 things sure in life: death, taxes, and Carl Jr. not dropping his points. Although we were wrong in that, but it just goes to show. It is the established mindset that Carl Jr. is going to win a lot. He's going to do very well. That you've got people who are expected to do very well. People like Pac, Kappa, all the rest of these kind of characters. So I think this format can shake it up. I think some of these new players can shake it up. But it's going to be a very interesting season. But I hope it's a kind of it's positive emotions it evokes rather than negative ones. But you were talking a little bit about what you'd then discussed there in the podcast, Eric. Now I've managed to only listen to fractions of it, unfortunately. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes long. Come on. But with this, I'd just like to, for those, of course, we would have then rewatching this or catching on to us live now, could you give us a little bit of, a few flashpoints that you discussed with Softy in this podcast, a few things that you specifically think people should be aware of, maybe in regards to Trackmania Grand League specifically?
Okay, I can firstly just explain why they have the playoff system as it is, because that is a topic that maybe not everybody is known or not everybody know, and that is maybe something they should communicate better. But the reason why Hillis and then Softy B wants this is because they want to target Trackmania Grand League towards a casual fan base, and they don't think the casual fan base will enjoy what was in Lyon when we started somewhere midday, and we ended up just before 1 o'clock in the evening. So they want to try it out to simply try to target more casual fans and fans that don't have as long attention span and don't have as much time to dedicate themselves to Trackmania. And then he went on to say that he was some sort of disappointed that the players didn't address it to him before, because he said that it could maybe have been a non-topic if it wasn't released to the public, that maybe if the players speak like this, they might hurt the overall view of Trackmania Grand League, which I to some agree with, that if you speak negative about something, you're gonna hurt the brand of it, but to what extent? He mentioned also something that went under the radar that I randomly just saw and addressed was, I also addressed it on the last podcast, that do you guys think that the dates for winter 2021 season are set in stone for the World Cup? I expected him to say no. I expected him to just say that it's just planned for that date, but we might change it. But he said that it's pretty much set in stone, and they want to do it because they want to go more green. People saw that on Hillis' Twitter, that they want to be more eco-friendly. I thought it was a joke, but it seems like that's the case, that they want to try to find a more eco-friendly way to actually host future tournaments. So if that means no playoffs for Trackmania Grand League, that's left to see, but that might be a case. And overall, that maybe just the feeling that Softy B think we should see stuff. And I guess that's the overall feeling in Ubisoft and Dale, that the community should see what the implementation is before they start to disagree with it. I don't know if I agree with that, because if you see a playoff system, you can, to some extent, imagine what it's going to be like in your head. But now we are in a position where we're going to see the playoff system. I guess we will at least discuss just how it's going to be. So some key points there, but if you want everything, you can listen to 2 hours of SoftyB talking.
And a little bit of you, of course. But I mean, coming into Trackmania Grand League Turbo, I mean, as I said, we're in the final stretch. We're at the home stretch. We're waiting essentially for the tournament to start. I mean, there's Evon's got his org to be announced. A few teams have got their caster to be announced. But realistically, all the information that could be out there is out there, other than, you know, what performance the players are going to be putting on track. You know, some are streaming it, some are not streaming it. But I mean, what's your kind of going into Trackmania Grand League? Is there any specific things you're looking forward to seeing? You're a bit concerned about? Give me your kind of pros and cons of how you're viewing this season, so to speak.
Yeah, of course, it's the 5th and 6th map again, which will be the breakpoints, how players will perform, and maybe if they're in the later stages, if there are maps that are like generally harder than the like tracks that got released now. I think the tracks in general are pretty nice, even though they have like some really hard parts on it. But I'm actually keen to see if Carl Jr. can actually perform in this playoff phase. I think he will qualify to that. But just to see, as Eric has mentioned beforehand as well, if this playoff phase suits him as well, and if there can be another player who can contest him. And in general, I'm really interested to see who is gonna end up in this top 8, of course, because the Trackmania Grand League is as stacked as never before, I would say. We have really good players, and everyone could take a spot into the top 8, I would say.
For sure. I mean, of course, we can't really just talk about Trackmania Grand League coming up, as also accompanying Trackmania Grand League is going to be the Open Grand League, or OGL, as it's named, of course. For those who are not aware, essentially OGL is the only way you can qualify for the Trackmania Grand League. You would need to get top 8 through the regular season of Open Grand League, qualify for a combine match, of which you then go against the bottom 8 of Trackmania Grand League, and then from there you have your chance to qualify from the combine to the main event. So to speak, that would then be Winter 2021, I believe. That would be there would then be that season you would then be qualifying for, and same for any future Open Grand League seasons. Now, I mean, there hasn't really been any changes really noteworthy to speak of in terms of Open Grand League. I believe the combine system may have slightly changed. I believe they might have changed up one of the steps of the combine. But I mean, it is something that's kind of flown under the radar a little bit. And I mean, Turbo, can you give me a little bit of an outlook as to what you're expecting from the combine, and maybe if there's any specific names you would then highlight for us as who you think might be in contention for the top spots?
So, first of all, I want to mention one name that really sticked out to me. I think you all know Granadi. I think it's one of the players who is one of the favorites for me to qualify to the actual combine match, but as well as Legu, and then also Dofold and Glast, if they are playing, of course. There are some names that I just throw into the pool. Moda has also put a lot of practice into that, but I'm keen to see if a full two player can perform on this level, because I'm not sure how experienced he is on those OGL/TMGL maps. But I mean, we have in the OGL system, we have only one top match now. And if you have seen the points repetition for the respective ranks, it has changed. So you get 40,000 points after the step for the first place. And then I think you get 3,000 for the 16th place. And there's only one match. So if you are first in one step, you are almost qualified to the combine match, I would say. So this is a huge thing. So you just have to no left one step. I'm actually gonna check myself, so maybe you can continue talking for now. So I'm gonna check the rulebook here real quick.
Now, Eric, if you can also give us our thoughts on Open Grand League. I know it's not something we've spoken about that much, but what's your kind of thoughts on Open Grand League so far, and how are you feeling for it in general?
So Open Grand League is something. It's maybe weird, but you look at it more like a fun, at least from what I covering. It is more like I don't know, Premier League, and then the division below it is sort of like Premier League is something everyone watches. But if you're a hardcore fan, then you gonna watch the rest of it. But okay, I have a huge potential. Just wait, see Ryoter picking me as one of the names. But if you have, I'm trying to ask people that are in contention for to be a contender. I asked Glass, I asked Grenady, I asked Carl, about who is really gonna be like that wants to battle it out this season. And everybody starts, there's so many names, and then I start to list them, and then there's not one clear favorite. Last season it was like, okay, we just wait until Gwen has won it. We'll just wait until Gwen has qualified. But this season is like, who is really gonna qualify? And if they're gonna win the Open Grand League, are they then gonna beat the players in that is gonna go from the bottom 8 in Trackmania Grand League? So FTB said he essentially thinks that all the 16 players in Trackmania Grand League will beat all the other players in the world, so essentially ending up with the same players next season. But I think actually Carl is a name that I want to look after. He has really come to life recently, and I had him on my Trackmania Live. He said that that's not a coincidence. Now he's going into the event thinking that, okay, I can actually win it. I can actually be one of the best. I'm not just here to play as one of the guys in the field. I'm actually one of the guys to win it. And then he wins Game World Solo Cup. He plays second in PKR in the same night. So he is the one name I would mention as sort of a favorite, but not really a favorite. But like you see in chat now, you see SRK mentioning many names. So if you are to predict a top 3 here, if you get all 3 correct, then I don't know, then you are godlike betting. I'm happy if I get one in the top 3 correct. So it's really going to be fun to watch, and it's really going to be fun to compare the times in Trackmania Grand League to Open Grand League like we did last season with Gwen and Afi compared to the Trackmania Grand League players, because then we already saw that Gwen and Afi could be something in Trackmania Grand League.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the players and how it's kind of who we might expect to do well and things like that. But what I was really wanting to pick your brains about, we've seen the Combine system playing out. We've seen Open Grand League playing out for the one season, of course, Trackmania Grand League Season 1. What do you guys think about there not being any changes to Open Grand League? I mean, and your eyes, did that make you feel like the system was working well, the system was working as intended? Or would you guys, in Nadeo's shoes, maybe changed a few things up going into the new season of Open Grand League?
So I really like the system, I have to say, because you had the KO in there, you had a single elimination bracket, you had an actual step, a seeding, and everything like that. So I really liked it. I mean, it can get a little bit anticlimactic in the end, but I would say that it can reward, or it will reward the best player afterwards, and he will actually be in the top spots, as we could have seen that Afi and Gwen have qualified. So I really like that system. Really looking forward to seeing that, since I think the OGL can be as stacked as never before. Just when we take the Zerator Cup now, I mean, it's also, you can't compare that, but we have seen so many French players, and also I want to name Xera here, who can also make it happen. So I think a lot of players have a shot of qualifying to the actual OGL, but it's really dependent who is qualified to that top match and who not. So it's also evolved with a bit of luck. But yeah, coming back to the Combine, it is a really nice thing and also nice to watch. It can be a bit confusing for the spectator, but once you get the gist out of it, it's pretty good.
If you talk about then the Open Grand League system, I think the last season we had, at least me and you, Scotty, had some sort of rant. I don't know if the rant is the correct word, but about the qualification system, when we actually found out how it works, how you actually qualified to, then it was top 32. I guess this season is going to be just top 16. But essentially, if you place high on one single map, then you get so many skill points that just take 5 maps up and you're still in it. And while someone who is actually averaging high, it's not going to gain enough points simply because the qualification system to get in to the place where you play against 16 players is it's not the best. I haven't really looked into it, so I'm not the best to speak about it, but just if I'm answering the question about what I would change, is simply that the qualification system to essentially get in to the best players where would be better, would be more like it actually is going to be, because you can have a risky player risking one single map, going for it, and then he ends up playing against 15 other good players, and he's going to be totally wrecked because they have such a better average or better consistency. So that would change, but also that the players maybe have a break, like in Trackmania Grand League, because at the end of the day, you should have this as similar to the Trackmania Grand League as possible, because the goal is to see if anybody of these can in the future challenge for the title in Trackmania Grand League. So just a better qualification system, and maybe give these guys a little break at least.
One of the changes I was thinking about, now it's not necessarily to suggest it would be the right or wrong change to make, but something I'd kind of dropped a little bit of hints about what I thought maybe could be changed about shall we just say the Combine in general. Something that I believe could in its own right spice up both Open Grand League and Trackmania Grand League a little bit, is to make the Combine a little bit more dangerous. Now, what I then mean by that, at the moment, a maximum of 2 Trackmania Grand League players can be eliminated from the season. So essentially, when it comes to the final standings, as long as you're placed 14th or over, you're guaranteed a spot for the next season of Trackmania Grand League. As, of course, if the players are beaten by Open Grand League players, then a maximum of 2 Open Grand League players will take their spots. Hence, an example of it was Roland and Coco last season. Their spots were directly taken by Gwen and Afi. Now, what I would then ask you guys about this, now, what we've kind of seen through the seasons, without really kind of picking on anyone in particular, we really saw some players not really realising their full potential, especially in Trackmania Grand League, I would say. Either some players who have been suffering from motivational issues, or some players who are just, maybe they feel that they're so far out of range to the top spots that they've not really got as much to fight for. And I suppose that the Combine feeling not as dangerous to them, as all they need to do is avoid the bottom 2 and they're safe. I would propose to make the Combine a little bit more dangerous for players that are in, for players going down, and a little bit more hopeful for players going up. As if you look at it this way, Trackmania Grand League, of course, has 16 players. So that's 16 possible people who could be going down. But when you look at the Open Grand League, you may have a great deal more players who are very equally matched. We've mentioned so many names there already, as you guys have already said, the likes of Carl, Granadi, Cap, Razi, Glass, Default, so on and so forth. These are all players which is very hard to kind of pick a difference between them, So that's a lot of players who could be contending for only 2 spots. So I'd kind of propose that idea to you guys, and tell me what you think about, as I said, making the Combine a little bit more dangerous, because I feel like that could light a fire under the ass of not only the Trackmania Grand League players and trying to now avoid being part of the Combine instead of just settling for a mediocre points position, perhaps, and it can also, it can also light a fire under those who are maybe feeling like they're going to struggle to break into the top 2, but even giving them 2 more possible positions, say a top 4, for example, would open so much more doors. I mean, Turbo, what do you think about that, first of all?
So when you said that, making the Combine more dangerous, I was thinking that straight away the top 8 goes through and the bottom 8 goes out. So no discussion, just top 8 in and the bottom 8 out. But I mean, more spots are definitely necessary. But by the likes of Yannick's, for example, there was a player who was picked afterwards. So orgs can decide. They have the option to decide what player they are aiming for. Only the bottom 2, I think, of OGL or of the Combine from OGL side and the TMGL side are eliminated, if I recall that one correctly. But
I believe that was a season 1 rule. I think they've just changed it to the automatic qualifiers are eligible now.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely agree making the Combine more dangerous, since it has been decided after the 3rd out of 4 steps, and then the last step was just who is going to place in what placement. And it can bring a little bit more spice into it, and also a lot more excitement to it. So that's what I would also offer to it, to that some TMGL players are not safe because some perform not that good compared to, I think it was Legu, who was in 7th position, or some other OGL player was in 7th position or anything like that. But he could have had a shot as well.
So now we're going to cheat again. If you want to cheat, just looking at the combined results, and looking at the combined results, like we ideally want, is that the top 8 actually is now playing in Trackmania Grand League. So I'm sort of happy that we have again Softy B in Trackmania Grand League, because he said straight away after to Yannick that your performance in the Open Grand League and your performance in the combined is good enough to be in Trackmania Grand League. So don't worry, you will get in. We just have to figure out who eventually gets out. So I have not, again, looked really through how the qualification system this year as well. But I think in the end, I think it's Softy B who is going to pick who is in, who is out. And he wants the best players to play in it. So I guess ideally, maybe if an org, let's say that if Massa ends up being like 14th or something, but still there's 2 other Trackmania Grand League players below him, so he's still safe. I still think maybe Big will love Massa as much as okay, we just gonna give him another season. So to some extent, the org picks, but I think Softy B also had a big role, at least in getting Yannick in, because new orgs that is coming into Trackmania, I mean, how much do they even know about who is the best one? So, but is there any changes this season, Scotty, to the qualification system itself in Combine, or?
So as far as I've understood, what it was in Season 1 for the Combine is essentially it was supposed to be how many people would qualify to Trackmania Grand League would depend on where they placed. As in, if they if 2 Open Grand League players then defeated Trackmania Grand League players, then they would essentially take the spot of them. If only one of them defeated Trackmania Grand League players, then only one of them would take the spot. If none of them defeated Trackmania Grand League players, then it would just be Trackmania TMGL top 8, TMGL just taking all of the spots for the remaining season. But of course, as Gwen and Afi did beat a significant amount of Trackmania Grand League players, they were then automatically qualified. Yannick's was so what then happened to the rest of the players is all but essentially the bottom 2 of Trackmania Grand League and the bottom 2 of the Open Grand League from the Combine were excluded, and the rest were then optional. So the orgs could then decide if they wanted to pick up another player. Hence when Yannick's, of course, got involved. But one thing I would kind of raise about that, you gave the example of Massa there. Now, it's a lot easier for, especially I suppose in, say, Softy's position or just in Nadeo's position in general, to say to Yannick, that's fine, no problem. We'll get you in Trackmania Grand League. When they have someone who's orgless, and when they have someone who I suppose you could look at being disposable, in a sense like Revolution was. Revolution didn't have an organisation. He performed, shall we say, to a mediocre level in the Combine. So, I mean, there is no org to piss off there. There is no org to be on the bad side of, to kind of sour a relationship. But, I mean, do you think that would even be a possibility if you do have such a high name org, shall we say, like Berlin International Gaming? I don't think it would. If Massa was the one at risk, I certainly think that it would have been a bit of a harder decision, so to speak. As of course Nadeo have shown their kind of eagerness to bring big organisations into the game, and I think with the amount of big organisations in the game, do you think maybe that's contributing to the decision at all, to maybe limit the spots to only 2 going down and 2 going up at max, to kind of retain some sort of stability from these orgs? I mean, you guys will know as much as I do. A lot of these orgs, as exactly Eric says, don't really know that much about Trackmania. So if their player gets eliminated, the chances of them just, picking up another player is a little bit more slim if they essentially get eliminated from the league. So, I mean, I'd kind of bring it back to you guys about that. I mean, do you think this is something we might see in the future, or do you think there's maybe too many factors to kind of go against that?
I think the field in general of the Trackmania Grand League right now looks very shaped in terms of the best players. We had the beta step before that, and also the first step. But I think like right now there are like little to none players who I actually see out of the Trackmania Grand League, and maybe Nadeo is expecting from the players with a big organization to do well. But on the other hand, I also think if Massa, for example, gets now on P15 or so in the combine, that I think he would not drop out. That's just my gut feeling for now. But of course, they can prove me wrong. But I don't really see Massa being 15th place as well. So I think only the players who can perform the best, and I would name Massa to them, can have actually those organizations.
But it's a good point that you bring up there, Scotty, because again, it's easy to maybe promise Yannick a slot in Trackmania Grand League when you have some players that are not directly linked to an org, like Revolution was. Like they already made him leave M&M Gaming before the season, so now it's maybe again harder to choose because now you maybe need to ask the org first, and then are you fine with essentially, let's say, change Carl, the OG Carl, to I don't know, hypothetically Matt from Space Station Gaming. Then they will ask the org before they actually promise Carl that you get a slot. So I guess that's the overall feeling about why there is no like top 8 goes through, bottom 8 in Trackmania combined. It's not true because then it's changing too much for a potential org. It's too less stability, like you mentioned, Scotty. So I guess the whole league is targeted to make it like a league where orgs actually want to invest in, like org actually wants to be in, and then if they have a small chance of their playing actually being knocked out, then it's easy math, then you're gonna do it instead of it essentially being maybe 50% of making it or not making it. So I guess it's more, if I was the CEO of an org, I would like it at least, but as a fan, maybe not. But again, we want Trackmania to grow, and then having orgs is one of the best ways to actually grow Trackmania Grand League. So I'm not that against only 2 players going out, but maybe in the future, maybe someone is outstandingly good and someone is outstandingly bad, but still it's in because they have a link to an org, have a big name in Trackmania.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you bring that up, Eric, and I understand, of course, that you don't feel as strongly about it as perhaps me or Turbo, but what would you then have as a kind of solution to this kind of problem, in the sense that, of course, Nadeo will clearly want to retain some of these orgs, and with their players having the potential to get eliminated, that does, there is a risk that org then might not stay around, as in that org has a direct link to that player. Of course, either, they won't ditch that player and they'll continue to sponsor them, or on the other side of things, they just simply won't be interested in any other player. Say, for example, it's a French organisation and the players that qualify by some fucking miracle aren't French. But, I mean, looking at this, is there sort of any solution you would then have to that, or even thought about that? Well, the Nadeo would have the chance to retain orgs within the series, but also have some sort of danger for the players. As I suppose it's like the way I would kind of explain it is, if you've got the Barclays, it's not even the Barclays Premier League, I don't even know what it is, but the English Premier League, you've got your teams that will fight for the title, you've got your teams that are fighting for the relegation spot, but what about the teams in the middle, And Eric's gone anyway, so we'll get his thoughts on that later. But I mean, you've got these kind of teams in the middle that are just like, what do we do with them? Like where are they? Or in this case, what's really motivating them to go higher, or motivating them to stop going lower? At least for the Premier League teams, it's a monetary reason and things like that. But I mean, Turbo. Well, of course, Eric kind of gets a gist of what I was asking there, as he did drop out on us for a little bit. But do you think there's any sort of solution to that kind of works for both parties?
So I wanted to pick up a point by Milmi, who brought up that there should be a league in between, that maybe you like cross down 1-0 or so, that the prize pool is like, I don't know, 800 euro for the first place of the like Trackmania, I don't know, not Grand League but Master League or something like that, and that you have like a second division of this. and then you have a combine match. Of course, you have to think about this format, but that people need an organization there as well. But of course, it's hard to find an organization for every player. For 32 players, it's really hard. But maybe you can also get some like smaller organizations up to that, and then eventually ask some French and English streamers to cast on the Mania Planet channel or something, or like not Mania Planet now, but Trackmania now. Mania Planet used to be. But this was kind of an idea which I found really good, because it still gives the player or the organization some sort of exposure, and also showing that they're still in the game. And the core fans will eventually see, yo, there is still an event going on. And maybe after the combine match, or not combine match, after the playoff phase, maybe other people are interested in this format in the second division as well. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. And what the kind of question I was originally trying to direct towards you, Eric, is, of course, you've got the kind of two sides of the argument, as that, say on our hand, we would like to see some players being in essentially a little bit more danger, to give motivation to those players to kind of step up their game a little bit if they've kind of lost hope of their own goals, to win or to get top placings. On the other side, to kind of light a fire under the ass of some of the players who might have lost motivation, seeing that only 2 spots are going to be available essentially every 6 months, or so to speak. Is there any sort of kind of solution to the points you think you might have in mind at all?
If you take away all the orgs and just want to have the players actually caring and actually battling against it, then maybe you should just do it. If you're bottom 2 in Trackmania Grand League, you don't have a chance to even play in the combine. You're out. Because now in the last season, it was like, and the people who had, let's say, 4 bad steps, they're like, why even bother training step 5 and step 6? Because I'm already going to be in combine, so I'm not going to battle again. So they essentially, not to say ruined the hype, but they had like an average placement of 13 and 14. So it was clear that they didn't have train, they didn't care. They just waited to be in the combine and then see what chances they had there. So I think that's the same that doing relegation in Premier League, like we mentioned, that you have some teams that is straight out, and then you have at least 1 or 2 teams that is going to go into some sort of playoffs or then combine, where they actually have a chance to regain the slot. So having a risk in the Trackmania Ground League itself would then put more pressure to the players. It would be then having more fun, because then you don't only care about who is in the playoffs, then you also care about who is battling against the last safe slot. Some of the most fun matches in Premier League and in football for essentially a non-football fan at this moment is when a team is battling against, are I going to be in the season next season or not? Imagine if that was on step 6, that let's say Evan and Marcin, or then Evan and Marcin, yeah, nice. Evan and Matt would battle against each other. It was like, whoever gets the most point on step 6 has a secured slot in combine and will have one more life, and the other one is straight out. That will at least put more hype and more attention towards step 6, and not only about who is in playoffs, who is in combine. So, but again, then the slot of who is what orgs security, what security does the org have? So it's not going to happen, but it would be something that put what you say, light under the ass, or fire under the ass. I don't know the phrase, but
fire under the ass, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I think it would be more fun as well.
Yeah, I really like the idea of having, the bottom 2 of regular season going out straight away, and the top 2 of, were you saying, sorry, the top 2 of the regular Open Grand League season?
No, nothing like that. Open Grand League just plays into the combine, and
with 14 players then, right?
Yeah, or you can take top 10 from Open Ground League and then bottom 6, or
fair.
Bottom 6, but number 9 to 14th in Trackmania Ground League will then have a chance of actually qualifying. So still 2 free slots, still, and then you have more Open Ground League players actually having a chance. So you want to see new profiles in this game. You will probably do it in the future, because now the players are at the age where they are going to leave soon. So anyway, we need new profiles, because imagine once the generation wave in Trackmania is going to hit once Spam, Kappa, Carl Jr., Tween, all of them are like going to have kids. All of them are going to be like CBA playing games anymore. What profiles are then left with? So you should maybe take it more gradually, try to recruit new players into the scene. But I guess my biggest contender for winning Open Grand League is not a new profile. He's like the first world champion. So I don't know. Hopefully one of these guys like Talchik or Panda or someone who I've never spoken to will actually do well, because we need new profiles in this game.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why I'm teaching my nephew already. He's 3.5 and can always already finish the first map. So that's good.
There we go, our first prodigy for the future. Now, in terms of the future for Trackmania Grand League at the very least, and what we're kind of talking about with the Open Grand League system, of course, when we get to Trackmania Grand League in general, this was, of course, essentially a preview that we were going to be doing about this. And in terms of a preview for the event in total, I mean, we've talked at length in this and what we kind of thought who would perform and things like that. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch any more training or if kind of refined your opinion, change your mind or anything like that. But is it changed at all in terms of who you thought would perform? Any that you thought was not performing or wouldn't perform as people might expect? Any dark horses? What do you think, Eirik, for this upcoming season? Are your bet still unchanged or?
I don't remember what my bet is. I feel like every season I put like 15 bets so I can just go back in time and say like,
I said that at this point.
Who was correct? But in the end, if you have to mention favorites, if you have to mention contenders for a win, obviously Carl Jr. is the name that everybody should. If you want to win this, then you need to see, am I going to beat Carl Jr. on a normal day? I don't think anybody beats him on a good day. Like we saw in Lyon, you don't have a chance if he's on par. But if he has some sort of a normal day, am I then having a chance of beating him? And see some players that have a chance. I have already hyped up Gwen since before Open Grand League started last season. I'm still going to not shut my mouth up about him. I think he's one of the guys that can beat him. I think having a playoff online is going to help him. I think maybe a playoff where it's essentially about being fast, about having sort of a good map would maybe suit him. Maybe one of the specialities towards Carl Jr., maybe he's faster. Then I'm going to name a guy like Pack, who won the show match pretty dominantly, who was one of the best players in the beta season, who had a bad season last season. So if he has a good day, he can maybe even challenge Carl Jr. on a Carl Jr. good day. And the last player I want to mention is Kappa. I think he is the last player that, if he has a good day and Carl Jr. has a normal day, then maybe he would also beat him. So I have 4 contenders for a win. I also think, but if you talk about who's going to place on the podium, then it's a whole other mess, because essentially everybody can place on the podium. But I guess I can start with saying those 4, and then essentially we can go through the other players. So I don't talk for 30 minutes about my rankings, but the 4 title contenders are Carl Jr. as my biggest, then Gwen is actually the biggest contender, closely followed by Pack and Kappa. So I don't know, anybody missing?
I mean, the one that you always said everyone was overlooking, Goldberg, Papu himself. Not thinking he's going to make it this time?
I think it's I have him as a really strong contender for the playoffs. I actually looked through the playoffs of what did I say? A strong contender for playoffs. He's going to be in the playoffs and then a strong contender for the podium. I looked through the playoffs of Lyon last season. He was actually qualifying through the winner bracket. He won, of course, he won the group stage. He placed second in the winner bracket semifinal behind Scrappy. And then in the winner bracket final, he placed second behind Carl Jr. But in the final itself, he placed 4th. So the reason why I don't mention Papu as a winner candidate, of course, he can win it, but I don't think that's really likely, because I think even if Carl Jr. is on a normal day, like not having his best day, not having his worst day, I think his skill level is still higher than Papu would pull out on a really good day. At least once you look at the playoff system itself, I don't think Papu is really known to be as fast. That is really valued in this playoff. So he is a really strong contender for the podium, but the reason why I haven't put him on as a title contender is simply because I don't think he has that high of a skill what to say, not a skill level, but the high
Ceiling?
of a peak. Yeah, like the peak he has is lower than the other peaks, but his bad day is also maybe better than the other players' bad day. So he's a safe bet or a good bet for a podium, but I wouldn't put him as a winner.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Turbo?
So it's a tough choice. So I'm gonna start with the worries that I have, and the worries right now. Just seeing Kaki, the playtime is Scrappy and Matt. I think that Scrappy is one of the players. I mean, he was a. Whoa! Let me speak up, please.
Yeah, but do they play Kaki?
Yeah, 16 hours has Scrappy, or 17.
Well, okay, well, I hope it's still going to perform.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much he practiced. He can prove me wrong, but on map sites, I mean, he's probably the player I most likely see out of the TMGL from the players. Don't want to be like edgy here or anything like that, but I'm not sure how fast he is. We will see on the first step, but they're not really taking it as serious as Riolu and Spam are doing it, because Riolu and Spam are practicing on stream every time. They have their 1 to 2 hour sessions, so they're getting their maps in and everything like that. So I think they have a shot of definitely making it to the top 8. Scrappy, I think, as well. Maybe he will put more practice into that later on. But I don't see him getting into the top 2 position again. I clearly see Cole Jr. and Pack deciding who's going to win, because Pack looks really strong. I mean, he has won so many tournaments in Trackmania 2, and then also the show match he has won as well. And then after that, we have Kappa, Gwen, and then also Massa, who I want to highlight here, because he is like a glass cannon. He can either make it or break it. He can be from top 1 to top 14. Everything can be for him. So really looking forward how Massa is playing, because he is really lacking in consistency. Have you seen the clip that I've posted under your tweet today, Eric?
No, I have been sadly busy. But I've seen you post it, but I haven't looked at it.
Yeah, but it was the clip where Massa dropped down from the Zeppelin on the 5th map and losing 30 points, even though he was in the safe spot. Okay. So I hope that this is not occurring to him again, because if he makes it to the actual playoff phase, I think he's one of the players who we can see in the top 3, because he's one of the fastest players.
If you talk about Massa, I mean, if Massa qualifies into the playoffs, Massa can win it all. This playoff suits him maybe better than anyone. He's known to be the riskiest one. He's known to maybe have some sort of momentum base. If he gets the momentum in the playoffs, he can win 2 rounds. He's through. He wins 2 rounds again. He's through. He gets confident, and essentially Massa has won it. The reason why I don't see him as listen him as a contender for the win is simply because I see him struggling in the group stage itself. I think it's even going to be more stacked this season than it was last season. He put a lot of hours into last season, but still didn't manage to pull it off. So I think the group stage format is not really suitable for a guy like Massa. But like you said, if he's true, then he can win it also. He's maybe the hardest one to put on a map. If he's number 1, if he's number 9, because he can be every single
glass cannon.
Yeah,
just buying orb without armor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose that's very accurate, and I'm curious to see what Massa's kind of max level is on these kind of maps, because I mean, Massa was had a little bit of an aura around him, especially through, shall we say, like kind of 2014-15 through to kind of 2017-18, where he reached every single Tech Grand Final, where he was that player who would be, he could win every tournament regardless of who he was playing against, but he could also come fourth. He was a little bit of that weird player, but in recent years we've just not seen the same kind of level coming out from him, at the very least in some of the tournaments. I mean, we talk 2018's tournaments. I mean, we look at Giants Cup, we look at, I think he played one of the first Zero Hero tournaments, if I remember correctly, but we've not really seen Massa performing at the top level in playoff formats, shall we say, in a very long time now. So I'll be very interested to see how, if he does qualify to the playoffs, how he manages to get back into that groove. As we've seen him struggling. I mean, me and you, Eric, we had front row seats to Massa's journey through the season 1, and it was a roller coaster to say the least, but more downs than ups, it must be said. And for a player who, I suppose there's kind of two kind of main words I would use to describe Massa and what most impacts him when it plays, in its momentum and its ego a little bit. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but Massa had this kind of infallible, I believe that's the right word, but unshakable belief that he was capable of winning anything against anyone. He did have that belief where on his day, it didn't matter how good anyone else played, he had the max level that anyone had. Like, he had the peak that no one could reach. That was Massa's unshakable confidence going through all these tournaments where he reached all of these finals. Some of the tournaments he won, some tournaments he was setting world records in matches. But over the last few years, as I said, I'm talking, I believe Giants Cup, Gamers Assembly 2018, Giants Cup, and I believe there's another tournament or so he played recently, and of course Trackmania Grand League. That we've not seen that. We've not seen him reaching grand finals. I believe we saw him getting knocked out in 10th plus place. So we didn't see him doing in the grand finals. I think he got 7th or something like that in the World Championship in 2018, if I remember correctly. So you've got to think that, especially after Grand League Season 1, that the same confidence and the same, self-confidence isn't there. So for a player that's known that for so many years, I'll be very interested to see how he copes with that, and if he can cope with that, of course, as we saw him having a lot, as you saw, Eirik, a lot of ups and downs, and a lot of kind of emotional ups and downs from Massa. I mean, it was quite a straining season for him, so to speak. But I mean, in terms of Trackmania Grand League in general, I mean, I'm very much looking forward to it, at the very least. I mean, there's a few points that I'm anxiously looking forward to, like the playoffs and things like that, and maybe how Afi and Yannick will perform and that kind of side of thing. But overall, I suppose it's when you get to a tournament, it was like the Trackmania game getting released, of course, that when you're first thinking about it, you've got a lot of anxiety. Is it going to be good? Am I going to enjoy this? But then when it's getting close to the few days, you just want to play it, or in this case, you want to see it. So I suppose it's a bit of a kind of, it's a bit of, whatever the word is or phrase I'm trying to get there. It's something that is definitely something to look forward to, at the very least. We've got over the hump of being concerned about it, so to speak. But another kind of thing, I believe it was you that brought up, Eirik, in our little chat about something that you kind of wanted to talk about a little bit today, is the kind of hype of the game, so to speak. And I believe Eirik is actually just... oh, wait, you still with us, Eirik? There we go. Yeah, I just saw it freezing for a second. I'm like, oh no, here we go again. But talking about the hype of Trackmania, actually, and how the game's kind of retained any of its hype it had when it first came out. I mean, we saw all the figures about all the Twitch viewers coming in, all the views on these YouTube videos that were coming out and things like that. A lot of, regular Trackmania streamers getting a lot of views. But, I mean, you've actually looked up the statistics and things like that as well. And what would your kind of outlook be about how the kind of interest in Trackmania is looking at the moment?
If you sum it up short, it's simply like it was pre-release. I posted something on Twitter for people that actually want to see the graph and not only me showcasing it. I don't know if Irving can pull it up. I posted it today, but it reached a peak in terms of search numbers, of course, July 1st. Then it's going to be 100%. But if you go through, like, nowadays, it's like 14% of what it was compared to what it was on the peak. And if you go to February, before it was even announced that it was going to be a new game, then it was at like 12. So it's really, really similar to what it was pre-release. And it's kind of surprising to see that the hype is that much similar to when it was essentially not known that it was going to be a new game. Maybe people searched for it because they knew that Lyon eSport was coming up. I don't know. But if you then compare the release itself to the latest release of Trackmania, that was Trackmania Turbo, this release is actually smaller. It's less interesting to it, because the new game, in terms of Google searches, got 70% of what Trackmania Turbo got. And then it's only the keyword Trackmania, so I don't know how many people search for Trackmania Turbo. I don't know how many people search for a new Trackmania, but I was surprised to see that, because on Twitch it really looked like this release was historic. It really looked like that from Hillis' number about the players. So maybe the Google searches itself is not the best way to look at it, but I thought it was interesting. And then on YouTube itself, I have actually looked. I recently made a video about top 10 most viewed videos on YouTube. Most of them was actually created some days after Trackmania Turbo was released, so I hoped it was going to be like that this year as well, or this release as well on YouTube. But none of the videos that have the most views in the new game are even close to being comparable to what Trackmania Turbo got. So I think, I have it here. On YouTube, the searches for Trackmania Turbo was way harder than the new game. The new Trackmania only got 23% of the searches that Trackmania Turbo got. So maybe I was too quick to say that this release was historic. And now that you look at it today, it essentially feels like, let's say, December of 2019. We had Trackmania 2 Stadium, we had a new Trackmania Grand League coming up, but we didn't know anything else. So I mentioned it before. I think it's a missed chance about getting new players into the game. But again, I don't know the players' numbers. So maybe the players' numbers are good, but people don't even search for Trackmania anymore. So it might be misleading. But again, I think the overall feeling about how many viewers there are on Twitch, I think even the viewers themselves or the streamers themselves will say that it's really comparable to what they had in Trackmania 2 at the end of Trackmania 2 to what they have now. So I don't know. I really hope it's going to pull off with Trackmania Grand League. If not, the new game didn't really help Trackmania by getting more interest around Trackmania, because it seems like we are on the same plateau.
Right. What was your thoughts about it, Turbo?
I mean, it's very interesting because it's the same. You have actually posted it from 2016 as well, when Turbo came out. So there's a statistic on Eric's Twitter as well about that. And I mean, the searches can be related to other things, but that's only a speculation. Maybe how a map is done in Trackmania Turbo, and maybe the fact that people are not searching for the game is the fact that maybe they see a new video by, for example, this famous German YouTuber called Pete's Meat uploading some Trackmania, and they are not searching for it. So they're just seeing it in their subscription box and looking into the video, so that they're not interested into the game at first, but then they see, like the big personality is streaming it or playing it. And also the fact that Turbo was released on a console is also a thing that needs to be considered here, because this Trackmania is not on a console, only PC based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, which isn't really taken into account when you just look at the pure figures itself, is that, of course, Trackmania Grand League, why am I talking about Grand League still? Trackmania Turbo did initially have, a very popular release on PlayStation. No, it was, I can't remember which one did it first, but basically they were released through the Xbox Gold subscription, or the Game Pass, as it were, and PS4 Plus. It was released through there, so of course that's generating a lot of interest into the game. And of course, consoles are platforms which it's not as easy to search up information about. So that could have resulted in people then going on to Google to find out more about Trackmania, because it's a bit more difficult on console, or looking into YouTube to find out more, since the kind of framework that the consoles Trackmania Turbo had in general just kind of wasn't as good at it's not integrating things well like Discord as easily, where a lot of people get their information about the game. So I think definitely the console release has contributed a lot to Turbo's kind of peak there. But I mean, what do you, other than that, do you guys look at any specific factors about why Trackmania is experiencing essentially the same level of interest that it did before the new game even was announced? I mean, Snowflake mentioning there in the chat that he felt the after release content wasn't interesting, which lost a lot of momentum, and that's at least something I can go in a bit more depth about. But I mean, do you guys have any specific factors that you were thinking about, or reasons you thought the interest maybe was kind of going back to normal, so to speak?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take it as a player side now. Just at the end of August, I wanted actually to download a new game because there was nothing really I could play. But now Kaki is going on. I have something to do again because all this track of the day grind, this summer campaign, it feels super repetitive and super boring for me at least. And the long-term motivation, so the thing that Joel, aka Snowflake, is mentioning there is definitely true because the release after the content was not there. There was not really something to go for. There was no ranking system or anything like that. Some things didn't work out that well. And just after the Zerator Cup, the game just went downwards and downwards, at least from my player side. And I slightly lost a bit of interest. I didn't know what to do, what to stream. I mean, I had my competition, but after that, I had nothing really to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely sympathise with that quite a bit because it was also something I struggled with after downloading the game. I mean, you have the initial hype of feeling like the whole game's in front of you when you go in, you play the training, you play the campaign. It doesn't take you that long if you're a decent player to reach a reasonable result in something like that. But it's like the question is exactly you've kind of put there is like what next? Do you just keep playing Track of the Day every single day, which, although it's a very nice addition, it's a very repetitive process. Nothing's changing. You're hunting a track, you wait for the leaderboard to be confirmed, you then hunt the next track for the day. Now, I mean, I would also highlight that, at the very least from the information I've been given, thank you very much for that, of course, but that Nadeo are very happy with how the community are engaging with Track of the Day. And it is something I've personally noticed as well. I mean, some of the UK players actually came back recently, and they're most days talking about the Track of the Day. But the only issue I'm seeing is exactly as Turbo's then saying there, is they've brought the game out, they've had an initial hype about it, there's been the ZRT Cup and things like that. But after that's done, it's like, what now? I'm thinking to myself, what do I stream when I'm thinking about streaming Trackmania? I don't want to be doing Track of the Day every single day. Sometimes the tracks aren't going to be interesting to me. Sometimes I won't like the tracks, but it's that or hunt campaign. That's or go on some random servers. And well, that's nice if you're talking about maybe community building and things like that. But we're talking about that as being an option that's further down the list. Instead of me as being a competitively minded player, there's no competitions about at the moment. I mean, I suppose Kaki's not necessarily as much a competition as suppose more as a kind of showcase.
It's endurance, man.
Yeah, I suppose you could look at it that way. But I mean, at the moment, not a lot of tournaments at the moment are comfortable on the new game, as there's a kind of a lot of issues with the kind of custom lobbies and things like that we've seen during the Game World Cup, and at least I've experienced directly through that and the ALM Cup, which was hosted. So there's really not a lot of community organised tournaments at the moment, and I think that's really standing in the way of retaining audience, retaining interest. I mean, one of the main audiences that I suppose you kind of run the risk of losing is like all of these people who have maybe came from TM2 and TM1 thinking, oh, maybe I'll try this game. But then they've done a campaign, they've maybe played a few tracks here and there, and then they just go back to doing what they used to be doing because, nothing, it's just the same. It's not like there's tournaments here, there's tournaments there. There's just nothing extra for them to do. But, I mean, we mostly talk about that from a player's perspective, but what's your kind of thoughts on that issue, Eirik?
I think I mentioned this before it released. I think I mentioned it during the release. I think I mentioned it after the release. It's simply that Trackmania is really, really good at aiming the players once they launch the game for the first time. Okay, I'm going to play the campaign. Everybody that streamed it, at least for a casual point of view, even for hardcore streamers, they went through the campaign. But the problem is for a casual fan and maybe a first-time player, is like, where do you want me to go now? What should I do now? I'll play the campaign. I had my fun with it, but at the end of the day, I want to produce content. I want to have fun. And maybe I don't want to be like one of these Nadeo hunters that hunt AO1 for 10 years and don't complain about it. I want to actually have something else to show my audience. I want to have something else to have fun with myself. And then they start to look through maybe servers list and like, okay, now it's 5,000 different servers. I can start to maybe 5,000 different clubs. But which one is good? Which one is bad? I saw some of these big streamers, Circa, for example. We saw, okay, Mario. Maybe I should go play Mario. But essentially, the hype just died out for them because they didn't feel like there was a natural next step for them to play at, a natural next step for them to progress at. So if Trackmania just had a way of still having an attention span for the players, because they are really good at aiming them towards a campaign, but they should be also good at aiming them towards what should they do now. We haven't mentioned like daily cups that is coming up. That would probably be fun, but maybe now it's too late for the first-time players to still come back to play it. We have mentioned matchmaking. I think that is horrendously the worst thing that is not implemented into Trackmania, because then you can play against. I would play Trackmania then because I don't want to go to a server and play against the best players in the world, because then I get the feeling about, oh, I actually am that bad, and I don't want to spend 100 hours to catch up to a skill level. I just want to have fun. I just want to go to a random match, play against people that are on somewhat of a same level, and we get isolated, so all of us think that we are at least somewhat good, and we still all of us have at least a chance of winning. So if you had that, I think it would be so much fun for the streamers that are or did promote it with 100k viewers like XQC, Soda Poppy, and Lyric. Imagine if they played matches against each other. Imagine if they showcased that, oh, it's not only time attack, you can actually play head-to-head against each other. So just having a platform where you want the players to go next and what you want them to do next, because for a new fan, a new player, it's maybe hard to navigate in Trackmania because of the UI. So I think that's a lost opportunity now, because I don't think the viewers or the players that just tested out the campaign is going to come back to play the next campaign. But let's see. Maybe Twitch Rivals is what's going to save us. Maybe that is going to bring some of these casual fans back. But then there should be something implemented in Trackmania that keeps a casual fan longer and makes it easier for them to stay longer. Because at this point, I understand that why players leave, because I had my fun with the campaign. I wait until the next Trackmania is out, until someone notify me, and then I play the campaign, and then I'll leave again.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a bit difficult to kind of think of a solution to that. But what were you going to say? Sorry, Turbo.
So I think actually that the campaign and the TMGL are actually like the breakpoints where we can see like the players who have approached will approach again or come into contact with the game by either watching TMGL or play the next campaign. And it's also very like reliant on the fact what they're gonna implement into the game. Will there be a matchmaking? Will there be other features from the club? Because right now it's kind of useless, and also a sort of event tab is missing. I got so many commands or comments under my video where they were like, yo, where can I find those events? And I said, yo, on the Trackmania News Discord server, but how should a casual player know? How should he know? So he can't really approach us as a community. And the approach from the outsider to us, like the bridge of it, is missing. And that's what the game should be about. That you have a club, that you have this event tab, or even a ranking system, or anything like that. And this is something that they have to change even before the fall campaign.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's when you look at it as well, even as a player who's, within the community circles, I mean, even like myself, like, I don't really feel like I've got anything to do. Never mind some player who doesn't know how to navigate, who's not in these kind of community circles. I don't feel like I have that next step. I mean, I'm waiting for the next CPS tournament, which has been announced, I don't know, coming next 2 months or something like that. But as you know, with Open Grand League, I unfortunately might not be able to participate in that due to work. But it's like, where's my next step to actually get involved? Like, and the answer to that, unfortunately, I don't know. But hopefully, this is something that's going to be changing soon, so to speak. Like, I know, Eirik, you were talking a little bit about the daily tournaments and the Nations Cup in the podcast. That was one of the parts I did manage to or was at least notified a little bit about, pardon me, but it's like, this is something, in my opinion, should have been implemented day one as some sort of daily event for people to get involved in, and the Nations League for people to get excited about. Although I'm not entirely sure I feel about the Nations League in the way they've described it. But I mean, like, although this is, I think we can agree, a bit too little, too late. If, as they are kind of planning and building these, bringing these sort of things into the game, it's like, well, how do you feel about the idea in general and the fact they are planning to bring it to the game, Eric?
Like plans of daily cups and such, or
yeah, the daily cups and the Nations League.
I mean, sure, it's of course nice to get it. I mean, I would rather get it at a late point than not get it at all. But again, a game release is such an important point because that is the moment you easiest gonna catch a new fan, easiest gonna recruit them to becoming from a casual fan to a hardcore fan, and that moment has passed. So if you implement it now, then you're essentially bringing more content to maybe players that already enjoy Trackmania or already enjoy the state of Trackmania. So of course, in an ideal world, I will have everything on day one. Maybe they should have waited longer with the release to have maybe implemented more stuff, like fixing the UI, fixing stuff that now has to be fixed. And of course, matchmaking, bring it in. People are saying now in chat that it's coming up. Hillis has said it's coming up. Softy B has said it's coming up, but there's no real date to it. So I hope once it's out that maybe they also get the marketing machine of Ubisoft behind it to actually promote that. Now in Trackmania you can actually play. Now maybe you can more focus about the esport side of it, because maybe that could bring some more hype for maybe a streamer to then again stream it, and then you get more fans playing it again. So I hope they, once they actually implement stuff, that is not only going to be that the hardcore knows about it, but maybe that you actually use Ubisoft for what Ubisoft is, and that is a big platform to showcase stuff. I haven't checked through Ubisoft's Twitter besides maybe week 1, week 2 of the release, but I'm curious to see how much information they actually post through the main channels of Ubisoft, because I don't feel that Trackmania is getting a lot of push there. So ideally, I want Ubisoft to push Trackmania, but at the moment, it seems like it's only Nadeo parts of Ubisoft that tries to push Trackmania. And we have mentioned it in the past, and I don't think they are the best at communication or marketing. So I hope if there is updates, that the updates will be known to the world and not only the hardcore scene of Trackmania.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's a feeling we can all kind of share about this. But I mean, what do you think this kind of means going forward for Trackmania now that we have had that missed opportunity? Although we will then have this sort of thing going forward. I suppose the timeline they've it's at least been indicated is that they want it after the kind of Trackmania Grand League cycle. So we're still talking 2 months from now at the very earliest, I would reckon. So what does this kind of mean going forward? I mean, we've spoken about the part where it's like impacted the kind of potential turnaround of players. It's limited the kind of players that we could have kept in the game, so to speak, and kept kind of invested in the game. But I mean, do you think this will then lead to some sort of higher player retention or higher interest going forward? Or I mean, how do you guys feel about how the kind of, now that the hype has kind of died down a little bit, has it kind of changed how you felt about the game in general, or about the situation in general, or are you still looking forward to what's to come?
I think the things that are going to be implemented is things that's going to make people that are already in Trackmania stay in Trackmania, because if nothing is implemented, people will leave. So the things that are implemented, I think, is the main factor for it being implemented is essentially to have people then resubscribe, rebuy it, instead of maybe trying to bring new people in. So, and I think that's a problem. I was so hyped about the release of Trackmania because I know that how big a release can be. I missed opportunity, so I don't think the future implementation is going to help the player numbers in Trackmania go that much up higher, but I think maybe it's going to please the hardcore community. So I think if you look into the future of Trackmania, I think it's going to slowly but surely maybe grow, but not by what I had hoped that essentially this release could have been, at least once we saw what streamers actually showcased this game. So If you ask me on July 7th if I would be happy about the situations now on September 8th, I would say no. And if you ask me today, I guess more at peace with it, but still, I'm not going to put all my money on a future in Trackmania as a job. I realize that if I'm going to have a future in Trackmania, it's just going to be a hobby. So I think the state of Trackmania is not going to change that much in the future, but if it's going to change, it's maybe slightly going to change to the better. But the biggest opportunity is gone in my eyes, at least.
So the question I was asking myself is it too late implementing the matchmaking system at this part? But I think no, because people have paid for the 1-year subscription, and maybe they will come back to the game and see, yo, they have changed this and they have changed this, so I'm gonna play a little bit more, and maybe the long-term motivation can be actually there. So I think it's not too late implementing that. I mean, of course, as you have already said, Eric, releasing the game is the most important part, and they released like a not finished product with a lot of flaws and everything like that, which is, of course, unavoidable or inevitable when you release a game, because there will be bugs or anything like that. But features are lacking, and I hope that the long-term motivation and the increase of player base will come in the future with that matchmaking or like daily events or anything like that, that players are saying, yo, there's this event now in Trackmania, I'm gonna play it. Something like the TTC that we've had in the old game.
Yeah, I suppose, and it's just a question of what kind of plans they've got in future. I mean, because it's going. I mean, obviously we're not even halfway to that point, but it is going to get to the point where at some point next year they're going to have to be asking themselves a question: how do we get similar levels of subscriptions as we did last year? You know, how are we going to draw these players back? How are we going to get more interest into this game so that they will get more interest into the game? That's definitely what I'm looking for, and what I'm looking to see what they'll bring to the table for the people who are maybe in my kind of position where thinking, you know, what's next? You know, am I just going to be playing tournaments casually? Am I just going to be, you know, on the backside of things? Is that going to be how it's going to work? You know, that's the kind of questions I'm asking myself. But I suppose it's always with Trackmania, I always find myself saying it's going to be an interesting kind of next few weeks, next few months or something like that. And I do certainly feel that way. It's not just something I say for the fun of it, but it's always a developing situation that we have, you know. And I think that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Like, there's always something coming, but on the other hand, it feels like there's always something coming because there was something missing in the first place, you know. That's what it does feel like a little bit to me. But I suppose in general, I think compared to last week at the very least, I do feel a little bit better about the situation of Trackmania. But I mean, was there any other points you guys wanted to bring up about the last week's events or any of the topics we've spoken about?
I mean, I think we just had to digest it because it was such a overwhelming thing to see an open letter from all 16 people, and then we just straight talk to that. I mean, I've seen Eric's reaction, like, kind of, is this the end of Trackmania Grand League? Will players fall apart? We had speculations, but now the situation is set in stone, and I'm really looking forward to the cast and to the actual event on the 13th of September. So this will be really cool. So I'm not as negative anymore. I'm actually positive and hyped for Sunday.
I haven't changed much. I haven't changed much. No, I still, just because Ubisoft Nadeo says that the players are at peace with it, that doesn't mean that the players are okay with it. I think they just want to maybe be like, okay, let's just see. But I still want to see this season. I still want to address how important this season is. If this season fails, then again, I'm going to bring up that maybe players start to leave. They are at around the age where essentially the life is in a change format from being a young adult to being like a full serious adult with other stuff in life. So this season of Trackmania Grand League is maybe the most important one. It's the first time in a new game. We have again, so many different players from so many different countries. But if these players leave, it's not like we have a guy from Slovakia ready to replace Tween. Then it's going to be a French player. So this season of Trackmania Grand League is important. I'm not going to stop following what the players think about it just because Ubisoft and Dale says that they are fine with it, just because they want to test it out. Because, again, this decides the future of this game. But I'm also then a casual fan. I'm a fan of Trackmania competitive scene. So I'm going to be, once the games are going live, once we see them on the start line, it's not going to be like a back of my head. What do the players think about the format? Then it's going to be like, okay, it's competition. I'm going to enjoy the competition. I'm going to cover the competition both in cast but also on Twitter. So I know I'm going to be hyped on Sunday, even though I'm hangover or not. I'm still going to be hyped. But can we just do a prediction so we can go back like an official top 3 prediction, or maybe
again?
Sure. But you didn't mention who you said was the best. I remember Turbo saying he agreed with my point, but we never had a set in stone top 3 for the overall season. Or do you want to go top 3 for first step, top 8 for the playoffs? We need to have a bet that is somewhat official, because at this point I have like 15 bets out there and I want to have at least one official bet besides my own betting league.
Maybe like top 3 first step, and then also like top 3 combine, like from the relegations, like Yannick's, Afi, Gwen. I think this can be interesting as well, where we see them if inside or outside the top 8.
Sure, go ahead.
So I think that now it's starting again. I think Carjunior is winning the first step over Pack, and then Gwen in 3rd position, and then Afi will be in like 7th position, and Yannick's will unfortunately lose the points on the last track and will be in P10. That's my prediction for the OGL, or like from the relegated players and the Trackmania Grand League top 3.
Yeah. For my top 3, I would say, I don't know why, I'm feeling Pack will win the step. I'm thinking, let's say Scrappy 2nd and Carl Jr. 3rd. I'll go for that. I think that's something that I can reasonably be seeing happening. I mean, these guys are always, well, in fact, maybe not Scrappy, maybe switch him out with Spam, perhaps, as I think he's a solid bet to get good points. So I'll be looking to see if I'm proved right for once instead of just cursing people. We'll see, I guess.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Gwen is going to dominate it.
Here we go again.
Number 2.
Carl Jr.
Let's go with Pack. Number 3. Yannick's.
Ooh, Yannick's 3rd. Okay.
This guy just wants a Twitter headline, I swear.
I just want to look smart if this actually pulls off, and if it doesn't, I will never post it on Twitter.
But
so.
I mean, everyone can make it happen. That's the thing. Also, a Tween or Riolu who's really consistent. Papu, Massa. I mean, we talked about him. Everything can happen, and yeah, it will be really interesting. Indeed.
But I really think Gwen is going to win it. I think he's going to pull it off.
Fair. Well, we've not got long until we see, guys. Any closing thoughts for today's points then?
So actually, I'm most likely will be hungover as well, Eric, because the 13th of September is my birthday, indeed, and the Trackmania Grand League is starting at this part, and maybe I'm casting as well. Who knows?
Glad to see someone's casting.
maybe.
But yeah, guys.
I said what I said, so if you want to kick us out, feel free.
Yeah, because I've had enough of the both of you. But yeah, guys, that has been episode 13, I suppose. Clocking in at what, an hour and a half now? We're getting good at this. We're getting good at this. But I suppose we're getting closer to the hour mark, slowly but surely. I mean, last time we were at what, 2 hours 10, 2 hours 15, something like that. But just a reminder before we head out, of course, guys, again, this podcast, Let's Talk Trackmania, which will be here once again next week on Tuesday at 9 p.m, same time, same place, as of course brought to you by ESAC. And not only do we have to thank Mr. Erwin Weber, of course, for producing the podcast once again, the man with the plan behind the camera, of course. But we also have ESAC.gg, which is essentially going to be the most important competitive platform for Trackmania going forward. I mean, forget your fucking tournament and your Google Docs and all that. But that's where to check out, guys, if you want to be seeing future tournaments being hosted and want to get yourselves familiar with the system. But that's been from us, guys. Again, as I said, we will be here next week, same time, same place. You know where to find us. Hopefully, we'll all actually be here and, no coming in the last 10 seconds before we go live or anything like that. But anyway, I hope to see you guys all next week. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy, of course, Trackmania Grand League along with us, either with me possibly watching or casting, who knows, or these two lovely gentlemen who will be involved in some sort of cast, which will soon to be confirmed. So keep an eye on the social links, guys. You can find us online, Discord, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, wherever you want. But we will see you all next time and have a great evening.